From conservative movement to conservative party, the message is clear: SoCons be gone. And Conrad Black of Crossharbour joins us to break down the Brexit. I'm Faith Goldy, and you're watching On the Hunt. Well, folks, it's the most wonderful time of the year, like conservative Christmas, a conservative convention palooza. Kickoff begins this weekend in Ottawa with the annual Manning Networking Conference, once branded the Woodstock of the right. Then, progressive conservatives in Ontario have their convention just 1 week after that, again in the nation's capital. And then the moment political junkies have been waiting for, the Federal Conservative Convention in Vancouver. Full disclosure, I've been convention crashing since I was about 19, so I've seen the full gambit of topics, almost all of which reflect the hot-button issues du jour facing the party and the movement. So it's been about 1 year since these convention goers met in their respective jurisdictions, and what have some of the national headlines included? Well, for starters, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau defended his ban on pro-lifers from running under his federal Liberal banner. And you'll recall tens of thousands of parents from various backgrounds rallied and signed petitions against age-inappropriate sex ed curriculums in Ontario, and even more recently, in Alberta. And herp derp, who could forget, within the past 12 months, euthanasia and assisted suicide has been brought to Canada, thanks to our activist Supreme Court. While our Prime Minister promises to force his entire caucus to vote in favor of whatever euthanasia legislation is proposed, even before having seen it. So it was kind of weird when I noticed our friend Preston Manning didn't devote a single slot, not even a breakout session, to issues that matter to social conservatives. There are sessions on cannabis, there are sessions on the environment. Heck, there's even a session on Aboriginal affairs. But a word as innocuous as family was nowhere to be found. But that's all right. SoCons will have their day in the provincial party, where actual differences can be made. Yeah, or not. See, after promising SoCons he'd review Premier Kathleen Wynne's sex ed curriculum during his bid for leadership, PC leader Patrick Brown's first move, was to march in Toronto's Gay Pride Parade. And he has since run an impressively successful campaign to rebrand himself and the whole party as smack dab right in the middle. But hey, we've got the feds, right? You're probably not. While they have yet to post their convention's official schedule, the headlining policy change on Media Radar involves the CPC's stance on court activism with respect to traditional marriage. And the whole thing about the Tories not talking about assisted suicide or commenting on the PM's tyranny against his own caucus's conscience, they're not really doing the SoCons any solids these days. Far as I can tell, the message from the party and movement hierarchy alike is pretty clear. Social conservatives are not welcome here. To be sure, social conservatism in Canada is not a monolithic bloc. No, we're not a bunch of Bible-thumping single-issue absolutists. Generally speaking, it's a group of political ideologies centered on preserving tradition in the face of social progressivism on topics from marriage and family, criminal punishment and rehabilitation, abortion and euthanasia, and family-based tax regimes, while its adherents hail from faith and reason-based backgrounds alike. Here in Canada, the movement has been historically strongest in rural areas, specifically in Western Canada. However, there's also been a strong relationship between fiscal liberalism and social conservatism among Canadian ethnic communities and new immigrants. The translation is, the movement is not limited geographically to any one area, while many communities which traditionally voted Liberal have actually become fair game for the Conservative, thanks to their SoCon credentials. And yet these people are being pushed out of the big blue tent. But I get it. Libertarianism is so in right now, and we want the press gallery to like us. Okay, with respect to the whole libertarian thing, let me let you in on one reflection from the godfather of today's libertarian movement, Ron Paul, who, by the way, he began his book on liberty with a chapter on why he's pro-life. All liberty, he says, depends on life. So if you pride yourself on thinking freedom includes freedom to end human life inside a woman, or that it's cool to kill yourself because you're mentally ill, with respect, go hang out with the anarchists, exit stage left. As for the media thing, I'm actually pretty sure that's what this is all about. I mean, the pressure to shut out SoCons is not coming from the general public. Just think about the abiding interest in the Trinity Western story, or the hundreds of people who gathered in support of religious free speech in Toronto's public square, or the parental coalition of thousands of atheists, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and agnostics over radical sex ed in both ends of the nation, or the amount of Canadians who cite pro-family policies as the very reason they cast their ballots the way they did in October of 2015. Or the fact that 60% of us want to see an introduction of some law, any law, that places at least some limits on when a woman can obtain an abortion in this country. Or the tens of thousands who take to the streets every year in the annual March for Life. While protests around the upcoming euthanasia legislation, that's just beginning to broil. Whether big or small C conservatives want to admit it, SoCons are an essential ingredient to their base. These people are motivated. Their leaders are, for the most part, rational and articulate. They have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of identified members within their movements, with contact information on most of them, so as to rally the troops and hit them up for donations in either time or money, while most of them are willing to travel great distances and stand in any temperature outside of any legislature for their cause. They are the dream when it comes to political mobilization. And a tip here, all you have to do is give them a small little percentage of what they're actually looking for in order to have their sworn allegiance. Because, frankly, no other party will give them the time of day. But here's the thing. If you stop paying them so much as protective lip service, their resources will not remain your resources. And one of the pillars that keeps you afloat will crumble. And if you truly think that there are more motivated red Tories than there are SoCons, God bless you, but you're wrong. And above this whole political ground game business, face it, as a society, we have replaced God with government. No longer does it take a family to raise a child, but a village, i.e. the state. I mean, they even refer to themselves as co-parents. And when you consider the disturbing upward trend to attack pro-family groups on school campuses, society is bending like reeds to perceived pressures propagated by the real extremists in media and the gatekeepers of popular culture, all of which tend to be simpatico with uber-liberal, pro-big government, anti-family thought. The debate on so many issues that matter to social conservatives are not settled. However, if we go on pretending that they are, that delusional disposition is guaranteed to have an adverse effect on conservative culture and Canadian history going forward. Stay with us. On the Hunt turns into the House of Lords. Conrad Black breaks down the Brexit. He joins us next.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta.
It is the demand that Britain should be an independent, sovereign, and democratic country, and that means leaving the European Union.
Never did I think I'd see the day where I agree with Respect Party's George Galloway. Welcome back. Will Britain really leave the European Union? It would seem the drama is only just beginning. The debate over a Brexit, shorthand for Britain's possible exit from the EU, now goes to British voters as Prime Minister David Cameron makes good on his campaign promise. Let's take a look at the bullet points. A new deal signed this week between Britain and Brussels affords a special status to the British, with its most crucial text involving a change to migrant benefits. Meantime, Prime Minister David Cameron will have until the end of June to convince voters that this deal was the best possible outcome and that EU membership is still worth it. As polls suggest, a very narrow lead for the inside, with many voters still undecided. Now, European Council President Donald Tusk is warning that the 28-nation bloc could break up under coupled strain from mass migration and the deal to keep Britain in the Union. Here to provide our audience with expert analysis of the latest and how history will unfold is author, columnist, and broadcaster, my dear friend Conrad Black. Thank you so much for joining us, Conrad.
My pleasure, Pam.
All right, Conrad, technically you are eligible to cast a ballot in late June. With your permission, would you tell our viewers which way you are persuaded to vote at this juncture in time and why?
Well, I'll follow the campaign closely, and obviously the leaders, of which I do not consider George Gallagher to be one, or Galloway, will make their case, and they deserve to be listened to fair-mindedly. But as of now, my inclination would be to vote for the outers.
Why?
Because Boris Johnson is the de facto leader of the group, and I know him well, and he represented us in Brussels for many years at the Spectator and the Daily and Sunday Telegraph, and I know what his views are, and he has said that if their side wins, he would then attempt to negotiate from a stronger position a better deal. And I'm in favor of most aspects of a common market, but I've never been in favor of stripping the institutions, the political institutions of Britain that have evolved in that country for 900 years. I should stop that noise.
Not to worry.
There. Sorry about that. That have evolved over 900 years and served the country well, and take the sovereignty and the authorities of the British Parliament and attendant and accompanying institutions, and devolve them to Brussels and Strasbourg, which are well-intentioned institutions, and I, like every other sane person, rejoice in the fact that these European nationalities have been at each other's throats for so much of the whole history of the nation state, 500 years, are now cooperating so well. Nobody in this referendum campaign in Britain wants to upset that state of affairs, but I think Britain can do better. I think what Britain should do is keep the common market, maintain its cordial relations with the United States, and go back to a level of increased cooperation with the original Commonwealth, which is essentially Canada, Australia, Ireland, Singapore, India, New Zealand, and India.
I'm
sorry, I counted India twice, but I only mean...
They're a big country. It's okay to count them twice.
I was... there may be other parts of the British Indian Empire, as it used to be, that could be included. So I wasn't just being repetitive like these debaters in the American primary campaign. But but something like that would have a combined gross domestic product of approximately $9 trillion, which is more than Japan and Germany combined, and 90% of what China has, and would be a serious entity. And it would just be the level of cooperation that each country is comfortable with. And it wouldn't be a matter of one country or one central organization infringing the sovereignty of any other country, other than to the extent that that country was prepared to pool its sovereignty with others.
Conrad, many of your sentiments are echoed when it comes to the out campaign. I just want to pick up on your comments, though, about the common market, because if you look at a nation like Canada, for instance, I think it's a bit of a straw man to say you need to be within a union in order to negotiate these trade deals. Sure, some of ours have taken upwards of 7 years, but you can negotiate fair, reciprocal trade agreements from outside of the European Union. I mean, Iceland recently negotiated with China. Certainly, China would be willing to do business with a much stronger economy like the UK should they exit the market. I want to just get back. Go on.
Yeah, well, even now, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, they're not in the EU, but
right.
they have free trade arrangements with them, and if they're smallish countries, and certainly if they can do it, Britain can do it.
Absolutely, and I think that the most salient point when it comes to what's on the minds and hearts of people who are at least going to be willing to be swayed is this business of sovereignty and regaining some sort of ministerial control and not having everything, possibly including this latest deal, the potential of it all being kiboshed just by Brussels. Let's stick on this deal. Is this deal enough? Does it actually get at the points that the Out campaign is making right now?
I don't think so, and I don't make light of the difficulties that the Prime Minister David Cameron faced in trying to negotiate. In general, he's dealing with the most federalist elements of the continental European states, and they are passionately committed to the whole idea of a united Central Europe, a centralized Europe, an ever closer union is the phrase. And it's very difficult to reconcile that with any notion of British sovereignty. So I think what he has is tokenism, and it may be a modest improvement on the status quo, but you mustn't underestimate the degree to which the British are irritated by this compulsive control that you have from Brussels, where the manner of stacking bananas in supermarkets, for example, is regulated. This exaggerated centralization of authority where the British, who tend, and it is a strength of that society, to be quite attached to their habits and routines, carry on as they have before in whatever activity, however mundane, and are peremptorily informed in 18 languages that they can't do it anymore. It does annoy a huge number of people in that country, and it's not necessary to maintain the basic point of a European community, which is that these countries henceforth will have civil relations with each other. They will have absolutely free or almost free trade, and much freer movement of people. Now, of course, that leads to one of the key ingredients of the whole controversy, which is the flow into Britain, not of people from Poland or Romania or something. The British don't mind that particularly, but these migrants who we all sympathize with, but no society can take more than a certain amount of them I hate to commoditize people, but a certain number of them at a time without it becoming quite disruptive.
And if we just stuck to the Geneva Convention and said if you truly are refugees, then just stick in the closest safe country, as opposed to being, frankly, economic migrants that are fleeing all the way up to places like Britain. If you could comment on this broad coalition that we're seeing take place right now in the UK between members of Respect Party like George Galloway all the way over to UKIP's Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, as you said, throwing his own Tories under the bus. Is that the best poster for the Out campaign, to see the cast of characters on all sides of the spectrum coming together to get Britain out of the European Union?
Galloway's presence is cautionary. I mean, he is really a scoundrel, as you know, but he's a formidable public speaker. I'm glad he's wearing a hat. He somehow looks less sinister wearing a hat than he used to. But
I might argue to the contrary.
I mean, he's an outrageous character, although he's a good public speaker. But he may pull some votes for them in Scotland, I don't know. But he's certainly the far left. Nigel founded a party essentially on the issue of independence of the UK from Europe without being anti-European. And he was a formidable party leader. And it's much forgotten now, but in the election last year, this brand new party of his received more votes than the Scots nationalists and the the long-standing Liberal Democrats, the third party in the country, and the coalition partner in the outgoing government combined. And he brings a solid block of about 12% of the voters in behind him. Boris must speak, I would think, for at least half of conservative opinion. The Thatcherite part of that party, which is still the majority of the party cadres, you don't know exactly where all the voters are now, but that group would be solid for Boris. And the Labour Party, while it ostensibly supports Europe, does so with such reservations that there will be no problem for any member of the current Labour Party, shattered as it was in the last election, voting for the outers, because the party expression has been so ambiguous that it has to spread from fanatical adherents to fanatical secessionists and everything in between. So it's really flowing freely now. And you said at the outset of this that the polls showed a slight majority to stick with the prime minister, but I don't think we have polls subsequent to Boris's announcement. And he will move the polls. He's a very popular man.
We did see a little bit of a jump. There was at least one poll, I can't recall who exactly by, but we saw a 4% jump on Boris Johnson's announcement. How do you respond to Prime Minister Cameron's charge that an independent Britain would be a step into the dark? What does Britain look like should they vote to leave the Union?
Look, it's an understandable tactic that he would say that, but it's complete rubbish. I mean, there's a great world beyond Europe, you know. Neither Boris nor even, so far as I know, Galloway is suggesting that they, go back to 1944 and deploy the Royal Navy in the Channel, so there's no contact at all with Europe. No one's suggesting that. No one's suggesting that you even need to show your British passport to get on the Eurostar and go to Paris. But it's only a curtailment of the regulatory powers in the United Kingdom of the European central government in Brussels and Strasbourg. That's all they're talking about. And certainly Boris, who never tires of saying that his grandparents, one was Jewish, one was Muslim, one was Roman Catholic, one was Protestant, and they were for a bunch of different nationalities. A great-grandparent was the Attorney General of Turkey and a political opponent of Kemal Atatürk. I mean, he's not a Little Englander by nature. He's not someone who wants to raise the drawbridge and pull down the blinds and just sing "Rule Britannia." I'm not talking about some of the extremists who really are xenophobes, but in general, all that group wants is a more satisfactory relationship with Europe, not one of reciprocal antagonism with Europe at all.
Now, should their side lose and the in or the stays win this referendum, do you think it is possible to meaningfully reform the European superstate?
Not radically or profoundly, no. It is terribly difficult to reform it, and I've always had the impression that it was essentially operated by people from the small countries because they're effectively neutral as between the larger ones, so Germany, France, Italy, and Great Britain, and that's where the institutions are. They're in Brussels and just along the Rhine, and it gives them, these individuals, a status they would not otherwise have because they're from little countries that don't really have a great deal of political influence in Europe unto themselves, and they become strangely possessive, almost like a religious cult of their authority and their espousal of what they're doing. And when anyone speaks of Germany or France or Great Britain in even slightly traditional terms as an important country in its own right, they bristle at this. And I mean, in my trivial capacity as a member of the House of Lords, I suggested we have a foreign relations committee, but it's impossible. Everything is the European Committee for something. I mean, it was just nonsense, and I didn't get anywhere, even though I think most of the peers agreed with me, but the government wouldn't hear of it. this was the Blair government at the time. Tony Blair is a very fine man. He's a Euro joiner too. It's like it is sort of like a cult. People either are immune to it or they're completely captured by it. And so compromise with those people is quite difficult. And so these things have to be referred to the country. And you're going to get a spectacular campaign. I mean, the British, when the issue is one of the future of the country and the sovereignty of the country, will treat us all to some very flamboyant oratory and so forth. They're a very articulate country, as you know, in general. And I mean, Cameron and the spokesman for the government and those parts of the opposition that agree with the government in these matters will defend their patch very determinedly. But Boris and Nigel and George Galloway are going to write a new book in hustings articulation, and it will be very entertaining.
The Europhiles, I would say, are a cult with a failing currency that have totally eroded the powers of locally elected governments and seek to bring in countries like Turkey within the next 5 years, as Interpol reports that they've brought in over 5,000 radical Islamists in this mass migration. Conrad Black, we are so appreciative of your time today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Faith. Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, stay with us. Your top headlines are on the other side of this break.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Trudeau's been spending money on fighting climate change. We're in serious trouble if we don't get an entirely new government. If you don't protect everyone's free speech, you're going to find your own silenced at some point.
Welcome back. Time now for the top headlines we're tracking for you this week. Belgium is making international news as a 16-year-old Afghan male claiming asylum has been stripped of his status after raping a Red Cross employee moments after receiving anti-rape training. And in Sweden, the fruits of moral-free social engineering and education are beginning to blossom as that country's Liberal Party youth wing is calling for necrophilia and incest to be legalized, claiming the current law is, quote, not protecting anyone. And hey, remember Cecil the lion? Well, thanks to tree hugger tears, wildlife authorities in Zimbabwe will slaughter some 200 lions due to the drop in trophy hunters. I keep telling you it's conservation, folks. And closer to home, an investigation is now underway after Canadian rifles ended up in Yemen rebel hands. Meantime, spy agencies have tracked 180 Canadians engaging with terrorist organizations abroad, while they say roughly 60 have returned home. Good news, folks. And Ontario's Equity Board is lobbying to see students banned from wearing clothing with offensive team logos, like the Cleveland Indians and Chicago Blackhawks. But don't worry, kids, Che Guevara t-shirts, well, they're still A-OK in their books. And Ottawa's Archbishop is warning last rites may be denied to Catholics seeking doctor-assisted suicide, saying priests will try to instead dissuade the individual from taking their own life and will pray for them regardless. Stay with us. Your Code of Honor, that's up next.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
All right, folks, one more thing before we let you go. Your quote of honor. This one from Albert Einstein. It is the duty of every citizen, according to his best capacities, to give validity to his convictions in political affairs. That's part of what we do here on this program. It's sort of self-affirming for me, and it's frankly just part of your democratic duty. All right, before we let you go, folks, you gotta tune into The Rebel. March 1st, our good friend Lauren Southern, she starts her new show, Stand Off. All right, folks, meantime, God bless, and remember, we got your sticks.